Welcome. My name is Tracy Hansen, and I'm the program manager of the Washington Center for Women in Business. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the WCWB. But welcome to Let's Talk Business. This is a weekly series that we do on Wednesdays at noon, talking about different aspects of business success and from great guest presenters. I'm really excited to have Audrey here today, and we'll learn about Audrey in just a moment. Couple of housekeeping things. This is being recorded, so if you wanted to listen to it again or share it with colleagues or friends afterwards, you're more than welcome to do it. Since it is being recorded, please mute yourself in between questions and comments. You're more than welcome to ask questions, or ask or have a comment either verbally or through the chat box, but just mute yourself in between. If you're having trouble hearing me or Audrey, I highly recommend the phone audio option versus your computer speakers. However, if you are using your computer speakers, there's no reason that and if there's no issue, there's no reason to change. And like I said, we want this to be interactive. We want to make sure that you get your questions answered. So you can either do the hand raising icon that lets us know that you have a question you would like to verbalize that, or you can type it into the chat box right here, and both Audrey and I can see that. Okay, so Heather, you are our business on the line there. Could you give us a little intro to who you are and maybe where you are in your business? And that might help Audrey and myself speak to you more specifically. Oh, sorry, I had you muted. I just unmuted you.
My name is Heather Don, and I'm a coach for creative people. What I do is I help them use their dreams and nightmares for creative projects. And I have a MA in consciousness studies and a PhD in psychology, so I'm pretty qualified to help them.
Wonderful. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm sure that usually we have some people log on here a bit late, but we're glad that you're here for the entirety of it. So a little bit about the Women's Business Center, the Washington Center for Women in Business. We're funded in part by the U.S. Small Business Administration to provide technical assistance to women in just some of the areas that you see on your screen there is what we can help with. But really, we're here to address any skill gaps or knowledge hurdles that you might be experiencing in business and help you overcome those. And we do this through one-on-one business coaching. And coaching is really a mixture of advising, consulting, and a little bit of that coaching or accountability buddy type thing. We can do one-on-one coaching over the phone, through email, through Skype, or in person. And then also workshops like this, either online or in person. We have in-person live workshops scheduled throughout the year. We do cover the whole state of Washington, but we're located in Lacey, Washington. That's why we do a lot of Skype and phone calls and that kind of thing to serve you so you don't have to come all the way to Lacey. The first time you meet with us is free. After that, it's $25 for the 1 hour session, but we do have scholarships available should cost be a barrier to you. My name is Tracy Hansen. Like I said, my contact information is there, as well as our business coach and the office coordinator should you want to reach out directly. All right, well, that is all I have for you on the Women's Business Center. I will be handing it over to Audrey to take over the bulk of today. Let's see, I just made you the presenter, Audrey.
All right, thanks so much, Tracy. So I think are you seeing my slides now?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, well, thanks so much for having me. And I love to collaborate with organizations like yours. because the public library, has such incredible resources to support entrepreneurs that save businesses time and money, and we just don't get the word out enough. So I love working with you because we're so aligned in helping folks get their business started. So I'll kick it off with just a little bit about me. I'm the Community Engagement and Economic Development Manager at King County Library System. So that's around the greater Seattle area. And today I'm going to talk about resources that are specifically at that library system, but this does, since this organization does cover the entire state, I do want to point out that your library, whatever your local library system is very likely to have something comparable. So I'll use the resources that I'm personally familiar with and that are available in King County, but please know you can often get something very close to that wherever you are, whether or not you have a KCLS card. All right, so let's dive in and talk about the entrepreneur's secret weapon, because you really do have the tools for success and business innovation at any stage at your public library, and they are available to you at no charge. So the big thing that I want to emphasize is that we answer questions. Libraries are here to fill information needs. So if there is something you need to know about, even if you don't think of it as being a traditional library concern, come and ask us. And libraries are very reachable. So for example, at my organization, you can just walk on in, and we have night and weekend hours. We have some time when we're open that you are free. You can reach us on the phone. We have 24/7 chat online. And if you have a question that we can't answer, we know who can, or we can find out, right? That's sort of the strength and power of a librarian, isn't that we're necessarily experts in everything. It's that we know how to find out everything, or refer you to the people who do. So that's why we can be incredibly helpful to entrepreneurs, even though we ourselves are not necessarily business experts. We can help you find and connect with the information you need through whatever medium is most comfortable for you. We answer questions and we buy stuff. Essentially, we are already purchasing a lot of the tools and information that you need for your business, which means that you don't have to go out and buy them again out of your own business budget. So of course, when you think of the library, people tend to think of books, and that is absolutely true. We have excellent books related to business, everything stretching from really nuts and bolts, legal guides, how to incorporate a business, to general work about, inspirational leaders and leadership, into, what kind of business to start if you're an introvert, right? All kinds of things. Those are available in print, and they're often also available in ebook. If you are someone who doesn't necessarily have a time to come on into a library, or you just prefer to read on your device, you can get a lot of the most up-to-date books in downloadable format, right, on your computer or tablet, or personally, I love to put audiobooks on my phone so that I can listen while I'm driving. And you can usually get these outside the library with a library card. At KCLS, we actually have an ebook business reading room, which I think I may have a snapshot of a little bit later, where you can find all of that in one easy place. We also, in terms of those online resources, have electronic subscriptions. So these are databases, tools, things that aren't necessarily books, but are sources of information that I will share with you. And something strange just happened to my PowerPoint. What, Tracy, can I ask what you're seeing right now?
It went back to the like we can see all of them. Yeah, I can see you maneuvering around, but it's not in the slideshow presentation anymore.
Are we back?
There we go. Yep.
All right. I'm not sure what happened there. Hopefully it won't happen again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the kinds of information. Again, libraries are about helping connect you, make meaningful connections between you and the information, the knowledge, the resources, the people, the organizations that you need to be successful by your own definition. So what are some of those information needs that we see at the library? We know that small businesses often need information about other companies, either because those other companies are your clients if you're B2B, they might be organizations that you would partner with, they may be your competitors and you would like to know more about your competition, either your potential competition or your or your existing competition. You may also need information about your customers. So if you're selling directly to consumers, you might want to know, for example, do the folks who are the target demographics for the kind of service that I offer, or the kind of product that I'm selling? Where do those folks live? Is neighborhood A or neighborhood B a better place for my business? What's a common type of expenditure for my business, right? So helping you navigate that information, find information about customers. You may also want to know about market trends. So what are the norms in your industry? What are the forecasts for your industry? What kind of sales can you expect if you're in a certain type of business? Often with newer entrepreneurs, and frankly with people who've been in business a long time as well, we also see a big demand for general business management skills. How do I start a business? How do I hire my first employee? I really need to learn this new piece of software. How do I do that? So these are kind of the general categories that I'm now going to share some resources for you.
And Audrey, if I could interject, we had a question from Heather, and I have a feeling you'll be addressing this, but just to make sure, she said, I'm interested in locating articles from professional journals about creativity and other subjects. What databases do you have? Will you be talking about databases here?
Yes,
in a
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I will.
Okay. We'll get that.
Thank you. And I'll make sure to highlight that. And I'll throw something in that isn't in my presentation as well along those lines. So I'm glad you paused me on this slide because this is, of course, my favorite slide. It's my dog. This is Hermione. And the reason I'm introducing you to Hermione is that I'm going to give examples throughout the rest of this. And this is a great excuse to spend the next hour talking about my dog. So the example that I will give you that I'll use as we go through resources is pet costumes, seasonally appropriate. So this is the kind of information that we can find out about an industry. So in October 2014, there was an estimate that Americans would spend $350 million on pet costumes. And in 2017, 16% of people celebrating Halloween said they would be dressing up their pets. And then I include the NAICS and the SIC codes for this type of business. So let me dissect what's up here a little bit, in addition to just being an adorable example. You'll notice that even though I've gotten 2 articles from 2 different years and from the same source, or a similar source, I don't have exactly the same numbers. One I've got a dollar amount, and one year I've got a percentage. That's pretty common. So if there's a piece of information you need that you haven't been able to find, sometimes it's because that information, just for whatever reason, doesn't currently exist in that format. And a librarian is someone who can really help you hone in on the content you need, and maybe help you come at it from a slightly different angle so you can get the information you need, even if it's in a slightly different form than you were expecting. The other thing I want to point out, if you're not familiar with NAICS and SIC codes, you don't really need to know this in depth because this is something your librarian can help you with. But these are essentially a number that identifies your industry. And what's handy about knowing these numbers is that you can use them across pretty much all of the sources that we're looking at to hone exactly in on what you want pretty quickly. So NAICS is essentially a newer version of SIC, and as you can see, we can get a little more specific with it in this case. So this is, I could not get a photo of Hermione in a costume, so this is the closest we could get, and you can tell she already looks pretty miserable being posed with the Great Pumpkin, so she objects to this topic. I want to mention that all of the resources that I'm going to be talking about today, you can find at kcls.org/biz, B-I-Z, and where we have a page on small business resources. And this is going to give you a little sneak peek of some of the things I'm about to talk about and some of the types of things you're going to find. So if you notice kind of under the featured resources, you can see that ebook business reading room that I've already mentioned. So thousands of ebooks and downloadable audiobooks you can pop right on your phone. Lynda.com, which is a series of video classes. Nonprofit and Philanthropy Resource Center, which specifically helps with grants and funding for nonprofits. Reference USA, which is a great database that I will tell you about in more detail because it is my personal favorite. And then access to business coaching. So Tracy mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that they have access to some business coaching. In our case, you can also get some at your local library. And if you look on the right, you can see some of the kinds of events we have, some series of business coaching and a class on financing for startups. You can also get to this page by going to kcls.org and under the Books and More tab, finding this small business listing. So let's dive into some of the specific resources around market and customer research. And I'm going to focus now on print and online resources, and we're going to talk about in-person resources a little bit later. All right, so we're going to jump right into my very favorite, Reference USA. And the reason I say this is my favorite is this is the one where I really get a wow. In its simplest iteration, this is just a really sophisticated directory. It's information about companies and people. There's a competing product called Reference A to Z. I'm sure there are others as well. So if your library doesn't have one, you're likely to be able to get access to a library that has one or the other. So why is a basically glorified phone book so cool? Because you can pull up really, really targeted lists of businesses or consumers. So let's look here at the information that the box I have on the left. As you can see, this is a list of individual people with addresses, zip codes, phone numbers. If I popped one of those open, you can see that they're all live links. You would also be able to see quite a bit more detailed information, things like how long they've been in the home, the neighborhood and census tract, estimated household income. You can get quite a bit of information. This is a customized list of people who live in the greater Seattle metro area who have a higher than average interest in dogs. So again, really specific. You can see that in this case, I've got 16,230 results, and several thousands of those have email addresses. So what you might be able to do with this is create your own marketing list. So let's say, Heather, I'll use your example, you're a coach. So maybe you've pulled up for creative folks. So maybe you have customized a list or had a librarian help you learn to customize a list. That is folks who are employed in creative industries and likely making above a certain amount per year, for example. And you want only people who live in the city of Issaquah, for example, or even within a particular neighborhood or census tract. You can get as broad or as narrow as you want here. You could generate that list. You can export the entire thing into Excel, where you can turn it into mailing labels, print them out, and there is your direct mailer. You can pull the phone numbers or the emails, and there's your mass mailing or your phone list. So that's a really powerful tool. The other thing is you'll notice up towards the top, there's a little button that says heat map. So what I could also do is click that button, and then what I would see is a map of where all of these folks live. So let's say I'm thinking about where I might want to open a storefront or what neighborhood I might want to focus on. Maybe I don't want to send a mailer to 16,000 people, but I do want to sort of get critical mass in a neighborhood where I know there's a lot of interest. I can take a look at that heat map and see where my most likely customers are most densely clustered. Let's move on to the second piece where I've pulled the other side of the equation, businesses. So you can see this one's a lot smaller, 400 results, and is a list of businesses. So I have now, using that NAICS code I mentioned earlier, I have pulled up all of the pet stores in the greater Seattle area. If my business is pet costumes, that might affect me in two ways. One is if I'm looking to open a store, I can again use that heat map feature to see where there might be a gap so that I can open where there's less competition, for example. I can also, again, pop one of these records open and get a lot of information about that company, especially if it's publicly traded. So you might be able to get contact information for executives. For example, you can often see size, income, general ratio of expenditures. So you can get a sense really of what your competition looks like. You might also want to use this another way and say, well, I'm making bespoke pet costumes in my garage. I don't want to open a store, but all of these folks might carry my products. So I want to contact them as potential wholesale customers. And again, you can use this for that purpose as well. So these lists are really powerful, and you can narrow in by pretty much any criteria you can imagine, by revenue, by square footage, by how long a business has existed, by number of employees, by number of computers that they own, by all kinds of different geographic ranges, by whether or not they have some kind of minority ownership affiliation. So again, really a lot of ways to hone in both on those individual consumers and on those businesses. So really, really powerful. Any questions about that before I roll along?
Can you tell us where that data comes from?
That's a great question. And the answer is sort of. And the reason I can't tell you exactly is because this data is actually sold. This is the group that runs Reference USA is called Info Group, the parent company, and their primary business is actually selling this data directly to businesses. This sort of business of selling access to the tool to libraries is, I think, kind of secondary for them. So if you went to Info Group and you said, I want a list of 16,000 business leads, what they would do is use the same tool, pull up the same information, but then they would push out your communication on your behalf. Not only would they charge you for access to the list, you would never see the list. They would communicate for you. So because this is their business model, they're a little bit proprietary about where their information comes from. So I can tell you generally, but not specifically. The information that you put out there in the world publicly, they are collecting. So there's some obvious things like property tax records that that are all public that you can look up on an assessor's website that verifies your address, your phone number, your household size, the square footage of your home if you're an owner or a renter. But they're also pulling things like, do you use a store loyalty card when you shop at Fred Meyer or Safeway? Do you subscribe to magazines? Some credit cards will sell data about purchasing habits. So kind of all of those things that you do in the world, if it's public, someone is paying attention to it and selling it back to us. So it's a good motivation to, that means it's really good data and it's really helpful for your business. And it's a nice reminder and motivator to all of us to be mindful of our privacy online. All right. Heather,
sorry, we had one more question come in about Reference USA. Heather just says, so you just searched for certain criteria in Reference USA?
Yes. So I would suggest either, if you've got access to it, just poking at it or making an appointment with your librarian. There are a few steps to getting into it, sort of like getting it set up the way you want. Essentially, what it will do once you get into the advanced search is it will give you a list of criteria down the left-hand side of the page. So you can say, yes, I care about geography. And then the criteria that I want with my geography are this. Yes, check the box. I care about the gender of the chief executive. Yes, I care if this is a headquarters or a branch location. So you can toggle those on and off depending on if you want to search based on something around that criteria or not. So there is like a checklist. Basically, you can't work outside of that, but it is a pretty extensive checklist. And that's the same for both individuals and companies. And if we've got time thanks. And if we've got time at the end, I can try to share my screen and actually click you around in there, but that can take quite a while. So I encourage you to make an appointment with your local librarian to really get the details. And Heather, also you had asked about where to get articles. This is where to get articles. So the database that we have at KCLS is called ABI Inform Trade and Industry. There are many databases from many different vendors. So rather than giving you specific names, I will just let you know that your library most likely has something from somebody that does something like this. But basically, this is a list of premium articles from trade publications and market reports. So I'll give you a couple examples. The one on the left is actually from a competing database. It's not from ABI Inform. It's from a competitor called Mergent Intellect. So as an example of some of the kinds of things you can get in here, and they are often, there's a lot right there. It's got breadth as well as depth, but these are a couple of common types of things. So one you'll see on the left is an industry profile for pet costumes. So you can see, I just grabbed a snapshot kind of out in the middle, an industry forecast. You can see there's a trend for cannabis-infused pet products, right? That's something that's coming down the line. You can see on the right what are the common what are the main drivers in the industry. What are some questions that you might want to prep, right? If you're gonna talk with consumers or wholesalers, what are some indicators about the health of the industry in general? So this is just one little chunk out of a much bigger report, but I think it gives you a sense of the type of information that you can get about the industry at large. And the nice thing about these is that a lot of them, these industry overviews are fairly compact and readable. You're also able to get things that are, an up-to-date article from a trade publication, for example, that's going to be often much more specific, a lot more technical, on a narrower topic. So if you're looking for some specific things, you can get those as well. And then you can see there's a Plunkett Analytics one that's going to give you some similar types of information, just a different provider. So Heather, you had asked about in general kind of articles. So a database like this that focuses specifically on business is a great place to go. However, if you're looking in general for kind of scholarship, say around creativity, right? If you're looking for professional development, most libraries are also going to just have some general databases, often from a company that'll have a name like ProQuest or Gale, but there are many. And you're also likely to find information in there. So that's the piece I didn't include in here because it's not business specific, but just keep in mind that there are databases of articles. You may or may not be able to see those individual articles just by doing a basic search in the library catalog. A lot of times you want to go find the link to that database on your library's website and open it up and search within it. And again, your local librarian can help you do that. I will mention one called Social Explorer that generates custom maps and demographic data. This isn't that common of a tool itself in libraries, so I'm not going to get into it in too much depth. But I talked a little bit about the power of being able to create those kinds of custom maps in Reference USA. So this is another resource for something like that. Those are also really nice if you're giving a presentation. You can, make that nice map graphic, that great heat map. But the other reason I wanted to mention it is that this is a resource for demographic data. So if you want to know in general, let's say you don't want to necessarily look up, who in the town of Sammamish is interested in pets, but I want to know, what's the average age of people living in Auburn, because I think that tells me something about my audience. Or I want to know where kids live, right? That sort of broader census-style demographic data. Your library is likely to have some kind of database that helps you find this information. Even if they don't, a lot of demographic data is publicly available during the census or through the census. A lot of what this kind of database does is slice and dice that in a way that's easier to search and a little more user-friendly in terms of its interface. I don't know if you've ever tried to navigate and manipulate census data through the government portal. It's not always the most intuitive thing. So that is also something a librarian can help you with. Even if your library doesn't have a subscription to a paid database, they can help you access a really rich source of publicly available data via the census, which is not just the decennial census, but also that American Communities Survey and the economic surveys that happen in intervening years. So that the data is more up to date than you might imagine, and more detailed than you might imagine just thinking about that decennial census form. So again, this is an area, demographic research is an area where your librarian can be extraordinarily helpful to you. I'm also just going to mention Value Line and Morningstar. So these give you information about public companies and give you more industry reports. These are used pretty heavily by investors. Generally, I think Morningstar is going to give you more of the public and nonprofit side of that. if your library subscribes to these. Often libraries used to get them in print. Now I think at least one of them is available only online. But if you really want to get into the detailed financials of a particular company, these are excellent resources. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about best customers. So this is a particular book, actually, that you can get in print, and you can also access it online. So we at KCLS have a resource called Gale Virtual Reference Library. That's a database that has full ebooks in it, and this is in there. This is one of them. But we also have it in print, and I think it's one that you'll often see around. And this is a customer demographics by product and service. So this one I'm going to spend a little time on and give you an example. This is the page in Best Customers, or part of the page for pet supplies. So you can see who are our best customers. They're households aged, they're aged 35 to 64. They're married couples without children. They're married couples with school age or older children. They're non-Hispanic whites. And it gives us a little bit of a trend, right? Average household spending on this kind of purchase is going to stabilize in the year ahead. Then it gives us a little bit of an overview, tells us about the industry, that kind of couple paragraphs up at the top. And then it really starts to get specific, right? So a householder under the age of 25, right, who is going to, on average, spend $73.78. And on a scale of, 0 to 100, there are 54 in terms of how likely they are to purchase this type of product, and they're 3.6% of your market share, right? So this gets you really pretty specific in terms of mapping that demographic data. So unlike something like Reference USA that's going to give you specific households, specific people, this is going to give you a sense of types of characteristics. So that might help you thinking about, well, you might tailor your marketing materials a little bit differently if you realize that your primary audience is married couples without children, as opposed to if your audience is families with young kids, right? It can also maybe give you a sense of geographically kind of where you might want to target. It can give you a sense of what kind of average household income is likely to be purchasing your product or service or frequenting your business. So again, that can help you get a sense of broadly who and where to target. And then you can pair this with some of that demographic data research. So if you understand that your primary audience is people aged 35 to 64, now a librarian can help you use census data to figure out where people aged 35 to 64 live, or find out some other characteristics around those folks that you might be able to use to support your business. So those are some of the key resources around market and customer research. So I'm going to transition a little bit now and talk about business skills and knowledge. So this is getting less into the specific research around your own company and more into general knowledge about how you might want to run your company, sort of the process rather than the content. And again, I'm going to focus on print and online resources. So the first one that I want to note is lynda.com, which I mentioned very briefly earlier. And again, this is a resource that is starting to spread among libraries in Washington State. And this is on-demand video classes. If you're familiar with lynda.com, it's probably because they were purchased by LinkedIn not that long ago, and LinkedIn has started to advertise. And often at least what I have seen advertised and the impression that I hear that people have about Lynda is that it is about software. And there is a lot of software knowledge in there. If you want to learn to CAD draft, or if you want anything related to technology and design, right, photography or Photoshop, anything like that, it's a great resource. But I think what's lesser known is that it has some really robust content on business skills and business software. So I just grabbed a screenshot here a couple of days ago about some of their top management training and tutorials, right? So coaching skills for leaders, how to lead productive one-on-one meetings, how to get great customer service, how to develop adaptability. So these run from everything from, very soft skills, things like how to coach, to some really nuts and bolts, right? How to write a business plan, how to read a P&L statement. And they also range from 5-minute videos to, get you energized on a Monday to a 8-hour multi-mode video class. This is all on demand. It's all asynchronous, so you can do it at 2 in the morning from your laptop on your couch. So very accessible that way. So this has really great quality, and there's a lot in there. And if there's a business skill or a piece of business software that you want to learn, this is a really great place to start looking. I also want to talk about the Business Plans Handbook, which is also a physical book, but also generally available online. So a really common questions that we get are around business plans. Sometimes people come to us right off the bat and say, hey, I want to start a business, I need a business plan. But often they're coming back to us after they've already gotten rolling without a really concrete plan written down. And when you go to apply for funding from a bank or a nonprofit, credit union, for any kind of loan product to get some kind of capital or from an investor, they're often going to ask you for a more specific business plan than someone might already have written down. So then the question becomes, well, how do you make a business plan, right? What's the format? What kind of information do you include? How in depth do you go? How do you read some of the information, the financial information in there? What's normal? What's expected? How do I estimate my income? So the Business Plans Handbook is really great in that it gives you sample business plans for all kinds of industries. So again, I went in, I found one for pet products and services and gifts. And I'm able to see a business plan from Heavenly Pet Memorials in the Fountain Plaza. And I can see what kind of information it includes. I can see their market analysis, their financial analysis, their financial projections. Again, I've just grabbed a couple of pages as a sample. There's more. So giving people that place to start, right? A basic understanding of what does a business plan, and not just any business plan, but one in my area, what does that look like? So this is a really great confidence builder. I'm also going to talk briefly about the Foundation Center. This is something that is not necessarily available at all libraries, but there are a few places in Washington State, King County Library being one, Seattle Public Library being another. And that this is a resource that's specific to finding funding and getting grant help. So it is for nonprofits, students, and artists. And a Foundation Center database does have a site license. This is something that cannot be accessed off-site. So at Seattle Public, I believe it's the Central Library. Here at KCLS, it is our Redmond Library. And part of the reason for that is it means there is someone to help you. When you go in, there's often someone you can make an appointment with who can teach you how to use it. I'm not going to get into this one in detail because it's fairly specific and we can't access the resource remotely, but I want you to be aware that it's there because if you are starting or running a nonprofit or anything that would benefit from grants or scholarships, this is an incredibly powerful resource and it's worth a little bit of travel to get it. You can find information about granting foundations that are private and that often don't really advertise and can be hard to find in other ways. And you can also get access to resources on informational resources, webinars, sometimes live classes on things like how to write a grant, how to approach a private foundation. So a very powerful resource if what you're doing aligns with its mission. You can also get access to business publications. So again, Heather, you had asked about where you can get articles. So before I had talked about places where you can get kind of premium market research reports, the kind of thing that's usually going to be behind a paywall online and frankly often run you a couple $100. And I had talked about some databases where you can generally access kind of academic articles, journal articles. But you can also often just get access to your most current local and national business publications, things like the Wall Street Journal or the Seattle Daily Journal of Commerce and the Puget Sound Business Journal. These are often a mixture of print or online. Some of these we have in print, some we have in both. Increasingly, some publications like this are only online. So you can get that kind of up to date, right? A Wall Street Journal subscription is not a tiny thing when you're looking at you're working on a small business and you're watching every penny. So you can get access to a lot of this local and national up to date trend information from your library, and again, often online. This one now is a book, Typical Spending Patterns by Industry. So I've mentioned a few times information about kind of understanding your financials, what's normal for your industry. So there are other resources that do this. Again, some print, some online. If you have access to Mergent Intellect, it has an online product that does this. The term you might have heard around a resource like this is the RMA, which is a particular version, a particular publisher of financial ratios. I happen to just personally find the almanac a little bit more user-friendly, so that's the one I'll demonstrate. So just to give you an example, so in this case, the closest I could get was miscellaneous store retailers under pet costumes, where it was too specific, but so I had to go with miscellaneous. But I was able to find that this specifically includes the NAICS code that I was looking for. So now I can really see pretty specifically what some averages are in terms of expenditures and revenues on different types in different types of areas for business in my industry. And I can, if you look across the top, you can see that I can tailor that based on the size of my company, right? So whether I have 0 assets or whether I'm a multi-million-dollar company, some of those ratios are going to be different, right? The percentage of your revenue that's spent on different things will differ a lot, likely, depending on the size of your business. So this takes that into account. So this is a really great place to start when you're really starting to think about those financials, or you want to check in and say, hey, is what I'm spending on this thing or that thing, is it reasonable? Is it in line with averages for my industry and the size of my business? There's also lots of general business guidebooks, and I left this for the end because it's easy in libraries for us to, when we think about libraries and we think about books, to go straight to this. So while these are really great resources, I did want to hold this a little bit towards the end. That often, right, there is just a book, right? How do I write a business plan? How do I start a small business? What are the legal things I need to know? And then you can also often get pretty specific, right? Here's a book on how to start and run a pet business. And there are quite a lot of those more specific guides as well. So again, there are things that can be really helpful to you in the beginning to get a sense of, what does it mean to do this? Do I really want to do this? What's it really like to own a food truck? Is that actually something I want to do? And it can also be useful later on to say, hey, I've been running this business for a while, but I'm getting a little bigger. I need to think more about some of the legal ramifications, or I need to think about, how the structure I'm going to use to incorporate my business. So there are books that will be useful to you at any time. And again, available in print, available for download online, available often on audiobook, CD, or downloadable audio. So up until now, I've been talking primarily about the resources that you can get in print and online, with frequent reminders that your local librarian can help you navigate all of this, can help you find the right thing, can help you use the tools. But now I do want to hone in more specifically on that in-person learning, the programs, workshops, appointments, services, the things that are going to happen in person, often in your library, that get you things like expert mentorship, advice, peer support, group learning. So programs, I would say, are the things that vary the most widely across libraries, sort of what they have. A lot of that depends on what partners are available locally for libraries to work with. So the types of things that you might see in general, you're going to kind of fall into 2 camps, which are classes and workshops and one-on-one help. So to give you some examples, I looked at some classes that have happened at KCLS fairly recently. So we've had classes on startup marketing, on finance and capital, on business structure and licensing. We've had some general how to start your business overview kinds of classes. Marketing is a question we get a lot. How do I market my business? And often that's technology related. So how do I market my business on Facebook, on social media? So we've had classes that are social media focused, classes on all kinds of technology, running from, very basic kind of, I need to up my technology skills in order to in order to be able to do some basic things all the way up through, I want to build my own website. How do I do that? And I don't want to discount the importance of peer support with all of this, that when you're coming, often there are events that are explicitly or primarily about networking. And of course, even these classes, even when that's not their specific topic, that's a huge benefit that you get, especially if you're kind of a solopreneur, it's just you or it's just your family or you have 1 or 2 employees. It can feel really lonely and you're busy and it's hard to really, to make the time to get out there and find other people who do what you do and share your experiences and knowledge. And the library is a place where you can connect with other people who are sharing that life experience. So when you come to one of these events, not only are you getting the topic, you're getting that connection to other people who are in the same boat, and you can learn so much from them. And if nothing else, get a lot of reassurance too. It's really helpful to have that support group. There are also types of one-on-one help. So you saw when I showed you briefly a snapshot of our small business page, kcls.org/biz, that you could meet with a business coach. That there are several different local nonprofit organizations that provide business coaching at the library. So you can sit down one-on-one with an expert who will individually talk to you about your business plan or your financials or whatever it is that you're working on at that time, who work with you very specifically one-on-one. You can also meet with your librarian one-on-one. So one area where we really are experts is that research element. So you can say, hey, I need to research my market. I need to find, I'm looking for a list of specific customers and I want a general understanding of, the trends in my industry. We can help you with all of that. And oftentimes librarians will make appointments. So sometimes you can just drop in and get lucky, but often these we can give you a more significant amount of time and do some research in advance and teach you how to use these tools as well. We can certainly provide information, but we can also teach you the best ways to find it for yourself, so that when you have a slightly different question or another question, that you're really empowered to use those tools exactly how you want to use them when you want to. So don't forget your one-on-one time with your librarian is a huge resource. Lots of libraries also offer some access to particular experts. So a very common one is libraries offering tax help. Sometimes that's only for individuals and not for businesses, so do check. Although if you're a sole proprietor, that might be okay, excuse me. Here at KCLS, we also offer some access to appointments with lawyers. They're not necessarily business experts. They are, volunteering their time, often from the Bar Association, to help with civil, not criminal matters. But oftentimes they can at least provide a referral, right? They might be able to get you pointed in the right direction. So keep an eye out for access to those kinds of experts. And the big takeaway I want you to have here is that there are a lot of different options for types of programs, workshops, and services at the library. And if you don't see the kind of thing you need, tell your librarian. Something we all share is that we want to respond to community needs. If there is something that we know is a need out there, we will work really hard to connect you with a resource that can make that happen. Sometimes you can even be the resource. If you want to offer a program, now, generally, you can't specifically promote your business or sell anything or directly recruit clients in the library. But if you have an area of expertise that you see lacking in the community and you want to teach a class like this, approach your librarian and let them know what you have to offer. It's not always going to be the right fit or the right time, but sometimes it is, and we really rely on lifting up the expert voices in our communities in order to be able to share that kind of knowledge. So if you don't see what you need, let us know. The final thing that I want to hit on is the value of the library as space when you are running a business. The library is place. Think of this sort of as a as a cheater co-working spot. Or the original co-working spot, rather. So of course, you come into a library and you'll see anywhere there are generally banks of computers. We have access to computers that generally are going to have office software of some kind loaded on them. So here at KCLS, we have Microsoft Office and Adobe Creative Suite loaded on our public computers. You can also just pop in with your laptop because we have Wi-Fi. In addition to just that computer access, you can print, you can copy, you can scan, you can sometimes fax. Again, this varies by library, although almost every library is at least going to have printing and copying. Um, I see this one a lot because a lot of us don't have printers at home anymore. Our life is a little bit more paperless than perhaps it used to be. So maybe you don't have a printer, or you don't necessarily have a printer that's capable of printing a lot or printing very high quality, and you've got something that you just need to run off today, or quickly, or this is just outside the capability of what you can do at home. It's great to pop into the library for that. Libraries often have meeting rooms, and these can range from a large meeting room where you could host a seminar to a small meeting room where you could have a one-on-one meeting with a client. So again, if you're kind of that solopreneur, if you are working from home, if you don't have an office, the library can be a space for you to have those meetings, have that sort of quiet, more professional space. Ooh, that's a lot of talking from me. So those meeting rooms are a really great resource. Check in with your librarian about the technology that's available in those rooms, and also the policies around those rooms. There are sometimes stipulations in terms of the kind of for-profit activity that can happen in those rooms, so do check that out in advance. Whether you're using a room or not, of course, you can always just pop in. It's a welcoming, safe environment. Tables and chairs, places to work, quiet and busy areas, whether you're someone who really likes to concentrate or you're like me and you like a little bit of white noise in the background. We have both of those. And of course, friendly and helpful staff who are there to help you. So if you think you can get 90% of the way through a task, but you just have a question about how to attach that to an email, or how to do that last little step, or how to answer that one question, staff is on hand and we're there to help you. Our hours are generally convenient. Libraries try to be open nights and weekends. And you can come and go as you please. You can stay all day. You don't have to buy anything. We won't even try to force coffee on you. Although you're generally welcome to bring your own if you want to. So now that I've, of course, absolutely sold you on the incredible value of your public library for your business, how do you get a library card if you don't already have one? Library cards are free. And where you qualify for a card is based on your address, because often their funding is tied to property taxes. So your card is going to be based on where you live or work or go to school or own some property. That said, most libraries in Washington, or many libraries in Washington, have reciprocal agreements. So for example, if you live in the King County Library System service area, but you notice that Seattle Public Library has a particular resource that you want to use that KCLS does not have, you can take your KCLS card and your ID that shows your address, and you can walk over to Seattle Public and get an SPL card as well. We have an agreement to give each other's residents cards, and that's quite common. So do keep an eye out for that. If there's something you want that's only in a different library system, often you still can get access. I'll emphasize again that I was talking about tools that are available specifically at KCLS, and different libraries will have different tools, but by and large, they will focus on similar types of topics. So you can find something like it. And if you really can't, then hopefully you have a reciprocal agreement with someone. And of course, as always, ask staff for help, which is a segue to my final slide. If you only remember one thing, remember to ask us questions. If you have a question related to your business, if there's a piece of information or a skill that you need that you do not have, come in and ask us, and you will be amazed at what we can help you find. So we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Audrey. That was wonderful. And I've seen the power of those different databases that you've talked about when it comes to small businesses, and it really is a great tool that you guys could be using, whether it's remotely from your location, like she said, or just going to get the book and asking the librarian. Let's see. Can we? Heather asked, "Can we get this presentation in print?" Do you mind if we share the slides? We will be sending out the recording.
I'm perfectly happy for you to share the slides. Go right ahead.
Okay. She will. If you could email those to me, Audrey, I will make sure that everybody gets that.
Will do.
Great. And like I know that a lot of these names of databases sounded really familiar to me, even though we're down here in the Thurston area, because they have a lot of the same stuff. So I don't know where everybody's located here, but yeah, I mean, everything that you said really held true as far as accessing those same databases at other library systems. And really just, you can always find really helpful and happy staff to help you at the libraries from what I've seen. You guys are really great at answering those questions. So thank you so much. Make sure that you are, you don't forget about it when you're thinking about it. Because like you said, I kind of at the beginning that people might not think about that when they think about the library. You know, you think about checking out a book to read, but and maybe not the other small business things. But gosh, we need to all make sure that everybody knows about these great resources at your local library.
Absolutely. Please spread the word.
Yes, spread the word to everybody. Okay, and feel free if you want. Let's see, I did mute. I'll unmute you in case you had a question there. I don't see any other questions typed in here. Did you have something, Tyler or Alexis?
No, but thank you. It was a great presentation. Thanks for having it for us.
Great. Yeah, no problem. Yes, well, I'll send out this recording and the slides to everybody this afternoon. Just check your email for that. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to Audrey or myself, and we'll try to get those answered for you after the fact. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody.